Was Sean Monahan the best free agent signing made last summer? We're going to discuss that on today's Locked On Blue Jackets.
You're Locked On Blue Jackets, your daily podcast on the Columbus Blue Jackets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to Locked On Blue Jackets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I am, as always, your host, Jay Foster, here to give you the good, bad, and the ugly about your favorite team and mine, the Columbus Blue Jackets. Before we get things started, I want to thank everyone for making this your first listen of the day every single day. Locked On Blue Jackets is free and available on all podcast platforms and over on YouTube. We're going to talk about Sean Monahan today, which should be a lot of fun, actually, because he had a great season. Before we do that, I do want to let you know that this episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money and use code LOCKEDONNHL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. Sean Monahan's first year with the team was excellent, quite frankly. Obviously, we have to talk about the injury. I want to talk about what this team could have done if they'd had Sean Monahan for all 82 games. I want to talk about the massive role that he played in the success of the team this season. And what are we hoping for next season, right? Let's get into all of that. So Sean Monahan came to the team on a free agent signing, I believe making what, 5 million, 5.2, I think it's 5.25 for 5 years. So 5.25 for another 4 years after this one, which a lot of people balked at. 5.5, excuse me, 5.5 million. A lot of people kind of balked at that and were like, no, that's way too much for way too long. And like, at the time, I was like, yeah, I would have done a million less and probably like a year less. But here's the thing. You pay in free agency for the player plus the day, right? They might as well put like a free agent tax on basically any contract that's signed that is going to be a year too long and $1 million too expensive, right? Like, look at the Erica Branson contract. Would people have been so frustrated about that if that had been 3 years at $3 million instead of 4 years at $4 million, right? But I think a lot of people looked at Sean Monahan and were like, he is washed up. He is only here because he's Johnny Gaudreau's best friend. He is going to be good for maybe the first season, if that, and then that contract is going to age terribly. And then he started to play, and at the beginning, I was kind of frustrated by it because it felt like he'd been slotted in on that first line center role without really giving young centers like Adam Fantilli the opportunity to do so, right? And then you watch him play, and I'm like, oh, okay. Now I get it, right? You see shades of that 6th overall pick from, God, what, like 11 years ago now? He was a 2013 draft pick, I believe. 2013, 6th overall. Like, you see shades of that. He had an excellent season. He had 57 points in 54 games, which I believe is his best point per game rating since 2018, 2019, and when he had 82 points in 78 games. Since then, he's had a lot of injury trouble. I feel like it's important to note. He only had 48 points the season after that, 28 in 50 the season after that, 23 in 65 after that. Both of those would have been COVID-shortened seasons. And then he only played 25 games in the 22-23 season for the Montreal Canadiens. And he had 17 points in those 25 games, which again, to me, indicates that there is still something there if only he was healthy, right? And I know that the Blue Jackets have been scarred by injury-prone players before. But then I look at last season for Sean Monahan, which by all accounts was the first time he'd felt truly 100% healthy in a long time. I believe he has had approximately 1 billion surgeries. I know that he got double hip surgery a couple of years ago. Like, he's had problems with his groin. He's had a lot of health issues, right? Last season, he had 35 points in 49 games with the Montreal Canadiens before the deadline. gets traded to the Winnipeg Jets at the deadline, where he proceeds to have 24 points in 34 games. He did play 83 games last season, which is always very fun when that happens. And then, he gets that big contract. I wasn't expecting the contract to be that much or that long. Like when I was talking about, oh yeah, it'd be fun to have Sean Monahan for a couple of years, maybe, give him $2 million for a couple of years. He was coming off of a if I can find the contract. He was coming off of a 1-year extension signed in Montreal for basically $2 million. It was 1.985 million. Kind of a real kind of show me deal. Before that, he was earning 6.4 million or 6.375 million. Which was, I believe, the contract that he signed immediately after coming off his ELC, but I could be wrong about that. No, I am in fact correct. It's happened before. It might happen again. Who knows? The point of all of this is Sean Monahan's contract seemed expensive at the time, and then you kind of prorate it out, and then you look at what he did this season specifically, and I feel like this season he more than earned that $5.5 million, not only for his on ice play, which again was excellent, and we talk a lot about how good Zach Werenski was offensively this season, how good Kirill Marchenko was offensively this season. Sean Monahan was so good. Like if we look at lines that played together for more than 200 minutes, let's say, offensive lines only, Sean Monahan was part of. Where is it? Let me set it to 250. Sean Monahan was part of the 9th best team in the league for teams that for lines that played over 250 minutes together, and Sean Monahan played 293 minutes with Voronkov and Marchenko. Now, I'm maybe moving the goalpost a little bit here, but even with that, like he's on par with, and this is in terms of expected goals for, or expected goals percentage. So like the amount of offense and defense that is being created, right? So while that line was together, they created 17.5 goals for and 12.5 goals against, or expected goals, which led to almost 60% of expected goals for percentage, which puts you on par with lines like, for example, Matthew Nyes, Austin Matthews, and Mitch Marner, who created 58.4% of the expected goals for. The Draisaitl line in Florida created 61%. The Barkov line in in Edmonton, excuse me. The Draisaitl line in Edmonton. The Florida line in the Barkov line in Florida, 61%. The McDavid, Nugent Hopkins, Hyman line, 62%, right? Like, there's really only 3 lines that did significantly better. One of them is kind of surprising. One of them is Lawson Krause, Jack McBain, and Josh Doan for the Utah Hockey Club. One of them is Jordan Staal, Seth Jarvis, and Jordan Martinook for the Carolina Hurricanes, which makes sense because they live and breathe that kind of thing. And then the nuclear Zach Hyman, Leon Draisaitl, Connor McDavid line created 68% of expected goals, which, like, yeah, you'd want that if you've got 2 of the top 5 offensive players on the same line, right? But even without like Voronkov on that line, and if we flip to, just for ease of it, we flip to the Blue Jackets only and go back down. Obviously, a lot of these lines played a lot less together, but Chinakhov, Monahan, Marchenko, which is what started the season, had a 64% expected goals. Fantilli, Monahan, Marchenko, 62%. They only played 1 game together. But the point I'm making here is Sean Monahan was key to success. Basically, it didn't matter who you put him with. It looks like he had success. Like, his worst performance was, if I can scroll all the way down to the bottom here, his worst performance was when he played, lost it. There it is. When he played with Boone Jenner and Marchenko for 73 minutes, so roughly 3-ish games, and they had a 47%. So basically 50, like near enough to 50. That was the only sub 50% line that he had, and they were together for, again, like 3 games down the stretch. Sean Monahan drives offense in a way that I don't think anyone expected. I certainly didn't expect. I don't even know if the coaching staff expected it. And that's kind of that, and that's literally only talking about his on-ice contribution, right? He was over a point a game player. He created all of the offense, let's say. Not quite, but near enough. And also, he was a great role model for the young centers like Adam Fantilli. I know Adam Fantilli really learned a lot from Sean Monahan. I know Cole Sillinger has spoken on record as learning from Sean Monahan. He was the perfect addition. We just all wish that he'd managed to play with his best friend for a little bit when he got here, right? But that's kind of what I want to talk about next. I want to talk about Sean Monahan's importance off the ice to this team. So we'll do that in just a second here on Locked On Blue Jackets. First, I'm going to tell you about Monarch Money. Do you ever check your bank account and wonder, like, where did all your money go? Between dining out, online shopping, entertainment, it's easy to lose track. That's where Monarch Money comes in. They are your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money is not just a budgeting app. It is a complete financial command center, so you can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place, so you can stop just managing your money and start building wealth. When I started using Monarch, I realized just how much I was spending on, the little treat economy for, I did good at work today. I'm going to buy myself a little treat. That is unsustainable, according to Monarch. So now I budget smarter and save more. Instead of juggling multiple apps, you can also use Monarch to check your finances, track spending, and even plan long-term goals. You don't need to open a billion different apps to do a billion different things. You can do it all at Monarch. So take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNHL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNHL for 50% off your first year. Welcome back to Locked On Blue Jackets. We're talking all about Sean Monahan today, the impact he's had on this team. And we've talked about his own ice impact, right? It's undeniable. But I think something that has had a lot of airtime as well, but is potentially just as important, or maybe even more important, I think, is I want to talk about the off-ice impact, right? I talked about it a little bit before the break. We talked about how he was a really good role model for guys like Adam Fantilli, for example, who, when Sean Monahan went down with an injury, Adam Fantilli jumped onto that top line center spot and excelled there, right? That partially, I think that was because Kirill Marchenko was also there and on a real heater. And, you could probably you could probably put just about anyone in that spot and you'd find success. That's not necessarily true. But Adam Fantilli has talked on record about I was ready for that because I've been watching Sean Monahan all season, right? And this is kind of, I think, mostly what the team brought him in for, honestly, is when was the last time the young players on the Blue Jackets had a legitimate top 6 caliber center to teach them things, right? Your number 1 center last season was Boone Jenner. He's been your number 1 center for, I want to say, at least a couple of seasons now, because this team just hasn't had centers, or the team has not been willing to play the young players in center. Before that, I believe it was probably probably Pierre-Luc Dubois was your number 1 center. I don't remember who was between Dubois and Jenner, but before that it was Ryan Johansson. It's been a long stream of young players or guys that are just kind of there because they have to be, right? Boone Jenner is an excellent winger. He's not a very good center, but he wins faceoffs. So he gets to play that number 1 center spot. And I don't know how much. I know Adam Fantilli is talking about learning stuff from Boone. I don't know how much he learned from Boone versus how much he's learned from Monahan this season. You can see bits of Monahan's game in Fantilli this season, which has been a really kind of fun thing to watch. I don't think it hurts that Sean Monahan is one of the best faceoff men in the league. But more than all of that, because we've kind of gone back to on-ice stuff there, more than all of that, the fact of the matter is that Sean Monahan came here to play with Johnny Gaudreau, right? He was literally getting in the car to drive down to Columbus when he got the news that Johnny Gaudreau had been killed. He then was incredibly, incredibly strong for this team, right? Because I don't think anyone in the entire world could have blamed him if he'd said, I don't want to go to Columbus now. I'm not sure that I'm not sure that I can go there, you know? If he had asked for a trade, if he had asked for a contract termination, I am 100% sure that people would probably have blamed him because the internet is what it is, right? But you also, I think, wouldn't have blamed him if he'd come to Columbus and been absolutely brutal, you know? I wouldn't have blamed anyone on this team if they'd come to Columbus and been absolutely brutal, right? Because the team was expected to be good. They lose Gaudreau. Team suddenly expected to be a lottery team. You know, I don't think anyone would have blamed this team if they just kind of rolled over and taken the L this season, right? They didn't. They fought. They made the playoffs. They pushed to make the playoffs. Excuse me, Freudian slip there. They excelled. They overperformed in basically every metric that people were expecting them to, right? Except maybe goaltending. And a lot of that is because of Sean Monahan. I think a lot of it is A, his on ice stuff, but B, I think a lot of the guys in the room looked at Sean Monahan going to work every day and were like, oh, well, if he can do it, then so can I, right? It would have been really easy for grief to swallow this team whole. And I don't think it did because Sean Monahan didn't let it, right? And a lot of the team have talked about, using him as inspiration for, well, if Monty's doing it, then so can I, right? And if Monty can find joy and if Monty can come to the rink and laugh, then so can I. And he's gone on record and said, yeah, it was a tough season. I would sit in my car and cry after practice, or seeing Johnny's jersey hanging up in the stall or whatever, right? But I think Sean Monahan pushed this team on the ice. I think he pushed them off the ice just by kind of being there and existing, right? I don't think this was him standing up and saying, hey, we have to do this for XYZ, I think he just kind of was like, well, I'm going to do my job the best that I possibly can. And it pushed every other player in this team to be like, well, I'm going to do the best job I possibly can, because if Sean can do it, so can I, right? And I think that has been the big key to Sean Monahan this season. Like, he's been the heart and soul of the team, not only on the ice, but off the ice, which is really, really important. And I think a lot of that is why this team didn't necessarily, when Sean Monahan was out of the lineup, the team struggled, right? Sure. The power play was basically dead on arrival. The penalty kill struggled. There were brief moments where this team entirely forgot how to score goals, But I think it would have been really easy for them to completely sink if Sean Monahan had not been around the team, right? He was with the team a lot during his injury, and all of the injured players were, which I don't know if that was a deliberate choice or if that's just what the team, I don't know if that's what the players wanted, I don't know if that's what the team wanted. It has to suck getting injured, before the season even starts, or 3 games into the season, and then, what do? You just kind of sit at home and stew about it and, mope, essentially. But Jenna, Gabranson, and Monahan, arguably the 3 key injuries of this team this season, missed a lot of time, but they were around the team basically the entire time they were injured. And again, I think that was great for, Sean Monahan is watching games, he's watching practices, he's talking to, again, I go back to Adam Fantilli here. He is talking to Adam Fantilli and saying what he's seeing, and being like, well, you do this. What if you do this instead, right? But I do wonder where this team would be if Sean Monahan had been healthy all season, right? Because this team would probably, Monahan would probably have had 30 more points if he kept producing at the pace he was producing at, which seems likely considering he produced at that pace both before and after his injury, right? He missed 28 games, so if we add another 28 points onto him, that's another 28 goals the Blue Jackets have scored. They probably win 2, 3, 4 more games with that, if we assume that it's kind of spread out. And they probably don't, they probably, force overtime a couple of times, or, they don't lose those 1-goal games, things like that. The Blue Jackets, if Sean Monahan's healthy all season, the Blue Jackets probably make the playoffs, which I think is why it sucks, and why it's been frustrating. but it is what it is. And so we move on to next season. What can we expect from Sean Monahan in season 2? Or yeah, year 2 of his contract. I said season 2 like it was a TV show. It's not. But we'll discuss that in just a second here at Locked On Blue Jackets. First, I want to tell you about Indeed, because you just realized that your business needed to hire someone yesterday, but how can you find amazing candidates fast? Easy. Just use Indeed. When it comes to hiring, Indeed is all you need. Stop struggling to get your job post seen on other sites. Indeed Sponsored Jobs puts your post at the top of the page and helps you reach the right candidates faster. I've been in that spot. I needed a new job like yesterday. Not for a while, knock on wood, but it happened. And Indeed Sponsored Jobs was the game changer for me. It's the first things I saw. Indeed is the only job hunting site I ever use because it's the best one. And the sponsored jobs come in real handy. They make sure that your post is seen by the right candidates right now. So you can speed up your hiring process with a 75 sponsored job credit. Just go to Indeed.com/lockedon right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Hiring, Indeed is all you need. Welcome back to Locked On Blue Jackets. Let's talk a little bit about what's expected of Sean Monahan next season, right? And I think the expectation is that we get exactly what we got this season, but for all 82 games, right? And like that's kind of out of his control. You know, it's not like he chose to get injured and then chose to have a setback, which I believe resulted in he needed to get surgery. And, you know, he was supposed to be out for a week and he was actually out for closer to 8 or 9. Sean Monahan staying healthy is important for this team. But I'm kind of expecting more of the same, honestly, from him. You know, I'm expecting, you know, 20, 25, maybe 30 goals. Which, you know, he was usually good for between 25 and 30 right up until, you know, the injury curse started happening to him. So hopefully we've broken that. We'll see going forward, but my hope is that we can get basically what we got last season from Sean Monahan, but better. Like I am expecting 80 to 90 points for Sean Monahan in the upcoming season. I think it'll very much depend on who he plays with. I think that he and Marchenko are basically stapled together. That other winger is important, right? Are they going to go out and get someone like a Brock Besser to play on that wing, or a Mitch Marner, or Nikolai Ehlers, who we'll talk about in tomorrow's episode, actually? Are they going to reshuffle the lines? Are they going to go back to that Chinakhov, Monahan, Marchenko line that was giving such great results at the beginning of last season until Chinakhov got injured? Are they going to put Boone Jenner there, who I thought was fine, if not great, in that role? Which, again, it was very much Monahan and Marchenko were great, and Boone Jenner was kind of the third guy there. But if you pick a guy that, for example, let's just say Mitch Marner for ease of anything, Mitch Marner is not going to be the third guy on that line, right? He is going to be an equal part of that line. And I think that's what they need to find real success. And I feel like if you got a guy like Mitch Marner, that's 40, maybe 50 goals for Kirill Marchenko. Sean Monahan is going to create the offense. He's going to be a responsible two-way player. Mitch Marner is excellent defensively. Like, to me, that's one of the best lines in hockey immediately. So it really depends on what they decide to do there. Again, you know, they've got those first-round picks that they maybe want to move on from. They've got free agency coming up. Like, they're going to make a move for a winger. Time will tell whether they make a move for multiple wingers or whether they pick a winger for Sean Monahan or a winger for Adam Fantilli. I don't think they'll go out and get both, but they might. Who knows? They've certainly got the cap space, right? So we'll see. Overall, again, I don't think it'll surprise anyone that Sean Monahan gets an A from me this season. I will be hopefully giving out another A next season because, again, like I was looking at his season, I was like, man, the biggest knock on him is that he missed those 28 games, right? Which it doesn't feel fair to criticize him for because it's not his fault. You know, in the same way that I wouldn't criticize a kid for missing an assignment if he was sick. But if you can get, and it doesn't even to be all 82, if you can get 75 to 80 games out of Sean Monahan next season, this is probably a playoff team. And that's kind of, he just, all he has to do is do exactly the same as he did this year, you know? Just play the way that he plays and honor Johnny Gaudreau and stay attached to the hip to Kirill Marchenko. Easy. So that's why he's getting an A, is because I looked at what he did this season and I was like, man, he didn't really do anything wrong. He was great on the power play. He was great. He was one of the best even strength players in the league. Arguably could be on Hart nominations. If he played all 82 games, you'd probably see, like, he would probably wouldn't be a finalist, but I bet he would be getting some votes for the Hart. And the penalty kill was also good with him. Like, it wasn't great, but it was better. So I am Sean Monahan, I think, was probably the most complete player of the big three this season. So Kirill Marchenko, Zach Werenski, Sean Monahan. I think it's close, but I think Sean Monahan was by far the most complete player. If only because he excelled in all three zones and played in all situations. Now, I love Kirill Marchenko. He is extremely good as a two-way player. Doesn't get a lot of penalty kill time. So unfortunately, we're going to knock a couple of points off for that. Obviously, still gets an A, but Sean Monahan, for me, gets the most complete player award for this team. Zach Werenski, incredible offensive gift. Would love for him to be just a little bit better in his own zone, right? Which I don't think is controversial to say. Sean Monahan, I don't really know where to improve beyond trying to stay healthy. And again, that's out of his control, right? So he gets an A. He gets the award. He gets the MVP award, probably, for me. I know we didn't really talk about that, but I could see arguments for giving it to Werenski, arguments for giving it to Marchenko, but I think at the end of the day, it has to go to Monahan, even though he only played 50 or so games. That's, again, maybe controversial, but that's how I feel. So, and it's my podcast, so I get to say my opinions. That's how this works. That's going to do it for me today, though. Tomorrow we will be back. We're going to talk about, speaking of, does Sean Monahan get a winger? We're going to talk about Nikolai Ehlers and what kind of addition he would be to the Blue Jackets. We'll do a little free agent Friday. Why not? So we're going to talk about his time in Winnipeg. Like, can you pry him out of there? What kind of money is he going to be expecting? Where do you put him in the lineup? All of that good stuff. So that's coming up on tomorrow's episode. I've been Jeff Foster. You can find me on Twitter at _Jacob Foster, JAKOBFORSTER. You can find the show at LO_Blue Jacket. If you have comments, questions, criticisms, you can email me at lockedonbluejackets@gmail.com. Thank you once again for listening. And until tomorrow, make sure you stay locked on.